I could vibe with dark romance if that's what the genre was, but that's not what the genre is. But no, the fuck you would not. Y'all would be shook. However, if someone decides that kidnapping their future love interest is the best course of action, don't say I didn't warn you. But then again, Mary Shelley is also the girl who allegedly lost her virginity on her mother's grave. What's up, guys? My name is Lou, and these are my books. Today, we're going to be talking about where the fuck dark romance came from. Because as a genre, dark romance kind of just emerged at some point. Dark romance seemed to have just, appeared into thin air. No one knew anything about it. However, it just kind of appeared and then got super major popular because it went viral on Booktok, because people on Booktok only ever care about smut, which is gross. But anyways, I've read a dark romance book before, and I didn't like it. Probably because it was like one of those like e-releases on Kindle Unlimited. And I wasn't expecting it to be good. I really wasn't. However, one of the reasons I didn't like it, it wasn't just because of the writing. It was also because of the fact that this entire book was just fucking bullshit. Like, just the thing going on between the characters just was not it for me, personally. And so, I have found an article. I found an article titled specifically, "These authors are putting the dark in dark romance." And I've also done some research into where dark romance actually came from as a genre. I'm going to share my findings with you guys today because I feel like somebody needs to talk about this, and no one is doing that. So first off, dark romance is a subgenre of the genre of romance. Just like how all rom-coms and sapphic romances, those are all subgenres. Right? Let's get that out of the room. It is not technically its own genre because it's literally just deeply encompassed within romance as a genre in and of itself. And the formal definition of dark romance is a subgenre of the romance genre that has darker themes and mature content. That is it. That's just what dark romance is. Right. So, technically, all romances with smut can be considered dark romance. And a lot of the smut in most romance books right now also follows the BDSM path. So yes, I would consider most books with smut right now dark romance under that definition, which is really dumb. But romance in and of itself comes from a more lofty type of thing from a literary revolution in the early 19th century called transcendentalism. And romance is descended from Romanticism, and Romanticism had a subgenre called Dark Romanticism, which by definition is a literary subgenre of Romanticism that reflected transcendentalist beliefs / fascination with the irrational, demonic, and grotesque in the 19th century, which led to the emergence of Gothic romance, right? So let's put the record completely straight. Dark romance is not dark romanticism, and dark romanticism is not dark romance. These are two completely separate entities. So do not come for me and try and say that dark romance is considered literature. Technically it is, because it has been written down for somebody to read. However, I would not consider it lasting literature. Right. Okay? So let's get into this article that I found, because I'll put this article, this article as well as my article in Dark Romanticism down in the description, as I always do for these types of videos. But here's something. I have it pulled up here on my iPad, and this article actually features interviews with both Anna Huang and who else was it? Rena Kent. I don't know who Rena Kent is. However, I am familiar with Anna Huang because her Twisted, the Twisted series that she had, I think that's what it's called. was really popular, and I did consider trying to read it at one point. I read the first chapter of Twisted Love on my Kindle Unlimited, and it was just not great. So I just decided not to do it. Because, you know, I'm not going to read something that I know I'm not going to like. It's stupid, right? So let's get into this, because they both have some really interesting things to say about dark romance as a genre. And then we're also going to talk about dark romanticism as a genre and things like what makes that genre and specific authors from that time that have written gothic romance, right? So, okay. Let's see. So this article specifically details dark romance as a subgenre of romance novels with darker themes and mature content. These stories often come with content warnings, morally gray characters, and plots riddled with trauma and violence. Popular tropes that make up a chunk of these novels include mafia, stalking, and kidnappings. Right. Okay, this is going to be kind of unpopular, but like a lot of what's going on with dark romance right now is just like, I wonder if the people who are writing these books and the people who are consuming these works are okay up here, right? Because like there's no way like you would find a mafia boss who kidnaps you and is fully obsessed with you to the point where he is like, we're in a relationship, you just don't know it yet, kidnaps you, knows exactly what your bedroom looks like at home. There's no way you can find that sexy. There's no fucking way. At least I wouldn't find it sexy, personally. Like, I don't, to each their own, really, because I know I have a thing for, like, suited men, but, suited men who stalk me, kidnap me, and attempt to be like, hey, we're in a relationship, here, call your family and tell them that you're safe with me, that isn't cute. That's not as cute as you seem to think it is.
What? No, dude!
So let's specifically go into the interview with Anna Huang and Rena Kent, right? Because they have some very interesting responses to the questions that were asked for them. So Anna Huang specifically says in this article on what she considers dark romance. She says, quote, I think dark romance is subjective, but to me, it is books that have darker themes and characters. So this is where you see a lot of anti-heroes and villains positioned as protagonists, where there may be psychological or physical trauma depicted on page, as well as villains. It's more like heavier emotions than in classic contemporary romances at the end of the day. And that's honestly like a pretty good, like a pretty level response, and I kind of agree with that. Like, I could vibe with dark romance if that's what it was. I could vibe with dark romance if that's what the genre was, but that's not what the genre is. The next question that was asked was on writing plots and characters that are not always socially acceptable. Like, specifically, Anna Huang says, these books tend to dive a little deeper into all sorts of themes that are not necessarily socially acceptable, at least in the mainstream. But there are plenty of people that have these fantasies. Because these themes are heavier, people go into these books already in the headspace to engage with that type of content, whereas it can be a little bit more jarring to explore those kinks in a very, like, fluffy, light romance. But this is online with the themes. Rena Kent specifically says, I think I speak for at least a portion of dark romance readers. We were never really interested in the heroes when growing up. We really love the anti-heroes, so we feel like these heroes are much hotter for us. They are much more interesting, I would say, because they're different. They're not in the norm, and that's okay because many women love it. I'm not going to dog on their opinions. That's not what I'm here to do. However, these are two very prolific dark romance authors. And their opinions on dark romance actually kind of fascinate me because it's like dark romance in and of itself, like reading it within, I'm not going to say it's not mainstream, because TikTok has basically made it mainstream to be reading this kind of content, like in public, in mixed company. Right. But there is a thing within the dark romance genre that I think a lot of people are like, I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this. It really feels like they aren't aware of this. But like like, this is not, like, you would not react the way the main characters in, like, the main female leads in these dark romance books react if this happened to you in real life. Like, people like to fantasize that they would. People like to do that. But no, the fuck you would not. I guarantee you that if you ever found out that somebody from the fucking mafia was stalking you, and you ever heard their internal dialogue like you read in these in these books, y'all would be shook. Y'all would be absolutely fucking shook. Y'all would literally call for the police, a restraining order, a fucking SWAT team. I don't know. The fucking aliens, maybe you would maybe signal from like a satellite or some shit. But you would not be going. I know that for a damn fact. And I hope a lot of you people do too, because Jesus Christ. Next question was on challenging the notion that the genre fetishizes violence against women. Because this is actually a very valid criticism about this genre, because a lot of this genre includes like morally gray male characters taking advantage of women who are outside of their scope. I'm taking direct inspiration from the dark romance book that I read a while ago. Where it was like two rival mafia families, and the main male lead was the only one left from a rival mafia family, while the girl was the youngest sister of a very big mafia family who's been very spoiled and like very sheltered all her life. So they're definitely not within the same scope. They have not been through the same things. Like, she is very naive and everything, and he is obviously very fucking traumatized. He definitely needs a fucking counselor. Obviously, like, these kinds of things, like kidnapping someone, stalking them, like basically forcing them into a relationship with you, because they don't have any other choice. Those are abuses. Yes, those are abuses. You may want to argue with me about it, but it's not. It's non-negotiable. It's abuse. Plain and simple. Anna Huang specifically says, at the end of the day, it is fiction, and I think people who read it should be able to critically enjoy it because they know these things are bad in real life. Fiction is a safe way to explore those fantasies and experience these visceral emotions without them being in being in danger. The same way it goes for any type of entertainment. The action movies that kind of glorify all this violence, they don't really think about the villains that get caught in the way, or the TV shows that feature serial killers as the protagonist. I mean, all of these glorify themes that are not great in real life, but the people who see them understand that they can be entertaining without condoning them in reality. Okay. And then Rita, what was her name again? Rena Kent says, I have very strong opinions about this because I feel like dark romance in general, is very frowned upon. And for me, it's a form of subconscious misogyny or blatant misogyny because it's a genre for women, written mostly by women. And society in general does not want women to express what they want. So whatever is not proper or morally correct is frowned upon. Whereas we don't frown upon the incest in Game of Thrones. We don't frown upon horror. We don't think people who love Stephen King are going to turn into crazy killers. But if you like dark romance, you're going to be morally incorrect. It's definitely a double standard, and I hope we do better. I am all for normalizing this. My personal opinion on this is going to be very different from these, and I know it is because they're biased and so am I. The way I would say my opinion on dark romance in and of itself, like as a whole, as a genre, is that it is not like all fiction is fantasy. Like, all fiction is fantasy. I personally have some original characters who have some very dark backgrounds. right? I have some characters who have some very, very dark backgrounds and come out somehow better from that. I have yet to write that bit because, you know, we have the starting and the ending, and you also have to write the middle, and like, because the middle doesn't write itself, you know, the fucking audacity. But here's my thing about dark romance in and of itself. No one said that the incest in Game of Thrones was frowned upon. Wasn't frowned upon, you know? Like, even the show acknowledges that it's bad. Even the show, even the books acknowledge that it's bad. However, within the world of George R.R. Martin's mind, it is not exactly not okay. However, it is explicitly weird among families that are not the Targaryens. Right? Right. So, let's just put it there. No one has said that the violence and action movies are a completely different thing. However, something that I think is lost on a lot of people is that in reading, you actually kind of feel a much deeper connection to the words on the page. And the reason for that is because you're not watching some actor play out a movie. You're not watching all of the visual effects. All of this, you are reading words on a page, and it is being played back to you for a mental image that you're playing inside your head. And I feel like that is a deeper connection to people who read, especially because they are kind of coming up with their own imagery for this. Like, you can describe your character however you want. However, but each reader is going to come up with a very different description of this character. They're going to think of this character in a very different way than either you or anybody else intended. And like, these situations can also become very personal, especially since someone is reading about it. I don't think people are morally incorrect for liking dark romance. No, that's not what I'm saying. However, what I am saying is that there's also the fact that Five Nights at Freddy's is a video game. People have been asking for an actual Five Nights at Freddy's chain, and Scott Cawthorn, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, has specifically said that he is not going to do it because even though it net him literally millions upon millions, he is fully convinced that someone would recreate the events of Five Nights at Freddy's. And he just doesn't want that. If you think about it, that's a fucking video game. A book is so much more personal because it's an author's personal conscience, whatever, and the reader's personal image of it. So, like, I think there are people who would definitely take it too far, right? I don't think, the events of what's going on in dark romance need to be normalized. However, liking dark romance it's never been a taboo. It's never been a thing. Like, I don't know who cares so much about what other people read. Genuinely, I really don't. However, people have had very visceral reactions to certain books. I've had very visceral reactions to certain books because it felt so personal, especially if the person's writing is good. But I genuinely believe that, dark romance being written by women for women, it's not fetishizing violence against women. However, it is setting a very interesting, perspective on how men should behave towards women. Do you understand what I mean? Because it's kind of like putting forth the idea, because there are people who would take this as actual romance advice. There are people who would do that. And that's why I don't like Colleen Hoover's books, because literally anybody could pick up any book, really. And no one would literally believe that it would be absolute filth, because, reading is seen as a really good hobby, other than, video gaming or anything like that. But there are going to be people like very young readers who are going to look at these books and think, oh, this is okay, when it's not. There are going to be actual young men who will pick up these books, who will look at these books, look at these male figures and think that they have to be exactly like these male figures that these women are creating, because it is a book written by a woman so that they think that this is what women want. That's not okay, in my opinion. That's not how this should work out. It's just really uncomfortable to think about the fact that certain people can be influenced in such a deep way through words on a page. However, when those words on the page are not socially acceptable, when the words on that page are like, you don't deem it socially acceptable, however, this is fiction, so it's acceptable in fiction, only in fiction, there will be people who don't understand that. There will be people who don't understand that. And that's the part that bothers me about it. So, like, go off, queen, read whatever you want. However, if someone decides that kidnapping their future love interest is the best course of action, don't say I didn't warn you. And the last question that I'm going to go over on how this genre is still romance. Anna Huang is the only one who responds here. And she says, I think at the end of the day, it is a story that ends in hope. It's about how these people survive the dark situations they were in and overcome their trauma to find happily ever after. And I think there is a sense of great emotional catharsis that comes at the end of that, which I think is what separates dark romance from something that is, you know, either horror or dark thriller. It is that sense of hope. And yeah, that can be true. However, it only works if you portray that correctly. It only works if you tell that part of your story correctly, if you actually plant the seeds to lead to that hope. Other than that, like, if your story ends with, like, literally just your female lead getting Stockholm syndrome, like, I don't think that's no. So yeah, those are actual, that article is actually really interesting. You guys should read it. And tell me what your thoughts are in the comments, really. But now we're going to go into dark romanticism, because this is something that I actually find very interesting. I'm a little bit of a history buff. And dark romanticism is actually very, very interesting. So let's just talk about this. In its origin, specifically, quote this article, the term dark romanticism comes from both the pessimistic nature of the subgenre's literature and the influence it derives from the earlier romantic literary movement. Dark romanticism's birth, however, was a mid-19th century reaction to the American transcendental movement. Transcendentalism originated in New England among intellectuals like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Margaret Fuller, and found wide popularity from 1836 to the late 1840s. The movement came to influence a number of areas of American expression, including its literature, as writers growing up in the transcendental atmosphere of the time were affected. Some, including Poe, Hawthorne, Melville, found transcendental beliefs far too optimistic and egotistical, reacted by modifying them in their prose and poetry works that now comprise the subgenre that was dark romanticism. Authors considered most representative of dark romanticism are Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, and poet Emily Dickinson, and Italian poet Ugo Foscolo. Yeah. So, in and of itself, transcendentalism was a reaction to American society, and dark romanticism was a reaction to the reaction of transcendentalism. So literally, this is what sparked Gothic romance. Like, we all know Edgar Allan Poe. He has some very great poems about this. And while he doesn't write romance specifically, his whole all of his work has this very deep rooted sense of just like it actually hits you. It hits you, especially if you have a really good narrator for it. Let's talk about specifically its relation to Gothic fiction. So popular in England during the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Gothic fiction is known for its incorporation of many conventions that are also found in dark romantic works. Gothic fiction originated in the Horace Walpole's Castle on Toronto in 1764. Works of the genre commonly aim to inspire terror, including thorough accounts of macabre and supernatural haunted structures, and the search for identity. Critics often note Gothic fiction's overly melodramatic scenarios and utterly predictable plots, in general with common elements of darkness and supernatural, and featuring characters like maniacs and vampires. Gothic fiction is more about the sheer terror than dark romanticism themes of dark mystery and skepticism regarding man. Still, the genre came to influence later dark romantic works, particularly some introduced by Poe. Later British authors writing with the movement of Romanticism, such as Lord Byron, Samuel Coleridge, Mary Shelley, and John Polidori, who are frequently linked to Gothic fiction, are also sometimes referred to as dark romantics. Their tales and poems commonly feature outcasts from society, personal torment, and uncertainty as to whether the nature of man will bring him salvation or destruction. So let's get this straight. This is what I mean when dark romance is not dark romanticism or Gothic fiction. Because none of these stories have to involve a romance at the forefront. Romanticism is just a term to describe it, right? It's putting a kind of romantic spin on concepts that at the time were not deemed like socially acceptable. So people were just writing about them, putting overly dramatic spins on them to be entertainment. And yes, that's kind of exactly what dark romance is actually trying to do right now. However, it is not doing it well. The transcendentalism movement did it better. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, honestly, like, I understand that literature has been an escape route for a lot of people. Literature is a place where a lot of people find solace. I personally use my books as a way to escape from the world of the living, as I call it. I don't like being on my phone for long periods of time. I don't enjoy being in front of a screen, especially since I'm a comp sci major. I enjoy having that time to decompress away from the world, because essentially outside of my phone, I can literally cut myself off from everybody else if they're not able to contact me by phone. I honestly hardly even respond to anybody in general, even when I do have my phone. But like, that's a completely different story, so we're not going to go into it. But like, let's be actually so fucking for real right now. There's a difference between actual good writing, like actual introspective writing. There's actual like, you know, writing that makes you feel things, and then writing that you're reading just for the enjoyment of it. And most authors from the 18th century, 19th century actually did this writing to express feelings. They did it to like invoke feelings in other people. Writing nowadays is a completely different can of worms. Not a lot people are writing just to write because it's like trendy or something. And like, a lot of authors are very mass produced at the moment, which is probably what I'm going to talk about in my next video. But just in general, like, writing in and of itself has changed so much. The genres have changed so much from what they used to be to what they are now. And not that those are bad changes, but I think the standards for the standards have changed so much that we don't really know what good writing is now, right? Because my gripe with dark romance is not its content. It's not the people who read them. Well, it kind of is the people who read them, because they can be so fucking obnoxious sometimes. It is the fact that literally you are going to tell this very obviously overdramatic, unhinged story, and you're not even gonna make it good. Right. Whereas I read Frankenstein for Halloween one time, and I was literally kind of moved, because you could tell that Mary Shelley had written this from the perspective of a mother, because at the time she had I think her first or her second child, and she was And she was writing this from the perspective of being a mother, like watching Frankenstein's monster, like kind of learn how to do things. And my teacher and my senior year English teacher, she told us that when she read this book, she actually thought back to these previous stages in her son's life. So that's one thing. But then again, Mary Shelley is also the girl who allegedly lost her virginity on her mother's grave. So, like, take that with a grain of salt. But either way, guys, that brings this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of my content, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified every time I post a new video. I post weekly on this channel, so don't miss out. Also, if you want to see more of my content, leave me comments down below. What you want to see from me, what books I should put on my TBR, books I should move up my TBR. Like book topics, literary topics that you want me to get into, things you want me to talk about, or just say hi in the comments. Tell me what you're reading. I always get really excited when I see your guys' comments. You makes me so happy and appreciated. Anyways, guys, I love my Lumas. Bye!